figure out how much time you actually spend at your workplace. Right? Other than sleeping, and for some of us that's questionable as well, other than sleeping, it's probably the thing that takes up the most amount of your time each week. Agreed? Mm-hmm. And based on that, how can we use our workplaces and develop it as a potential mission field? So that's what I want to talk about today, is utilizing your faith at work. So before we get started, I want to introduce myself. I'm Sue Bensel, and I am blessed to have a couple of workplaces where one, my realtor company, has the motto of God and family first, business second. My coaching and training business is with a company where we talk about sacred partnerships. And so I have the blessing of being affiliated with organizations where it's very easy to talk about my faith. It's encouraged. And I know that's not the case for everybody, so I know how blessed I am there. If you have questions or want to have a conversation around this topic at all, I would welcome that, and you have my contact information up here. So before we get started, I'd love to go around the room and just briefly tell us who you are and what you do. So what is your work, or your volunteer organization, or your school, right? Whatever that is. Where do you have an opportunity during the week to impact others, right? Who'd like to start? Great, thank you.
Sure. Nicole Stevens. I'm a nurse, and I work with blood cancer patients and coordinate their blood and marrow transplant.
Thank you, Nicole.
I'm Kim Bishop, and I work for the state Department of Natural Resources. I do accounts payable, and so it's kind of I break the rules because you're not supposed to talk about faith and work for the state.
I'm Ryan Gallagher. I work with kids with special needs in Adams County, and then I also am on the sub list of Jeffco, so I'm kind of working with a lot of teenagers at many different times.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Ryan.
I'm Hap Redenberg, and I'm a software engineer.
Terrific.
I'm Brett Kellum. I'm an internal auditor with the University of Colorado.
I'm Morgan Kellum, and I'm a secretary at Stanley Lake High School.
Excellent.
I'm Annie Larson, and I'm an in-home licensed child care provider.
And I'm Amy Nordencraft. I'm a professor at the medical campus for CU.
Excellent. So we have a variety of workplaces, right? And a variety of rules and regulations, potentially, to follow when it comes with sharing our faith at work. Agreed? Mm-hmm. Terrific. So I want to acknowledge some folks for our content today. I put this together, but it's certainly not from me. So the Center for Faith and Culture, Matt Williams, developed a lot of the content that we're going to talk about today. I would so encourage you to go to their website and dig into some of the things that they talk about. Dina Patton, Jean Veith, and Sharon Watkins. Sharon Watkins was the whistleblower at Enron, if you recall the story about Enron. And so sharing her faith at work was a real challenge for a lot of reasons. So first of all, before we start today, I want you've got a handout and something to write with. You've got this question at the very top of your handout. What does your job and or career have to do with the glory of God? Write down some thoughts if you would, please. How are you connected to the glory of God through your job and or career? When you signed up for this particular session, and thank you, by the way, for doing that, you saw that the synopsis said that this was going to be an interactive session. right? So, yes.
Morning.
Yes, yes. So we're going to do this kind of as a workshop. Is that okay with everyone?
Mhm.
Because what will happen, I hope that you'll hear some things that I'm gonna share that will impact you. I know there will be some impact from each other, right? The genius in the room, right? And you're all the genius in the room. So whoever wrote something down, anybody like to share what they wrote down? Please.
So, as I said, I'm a professor of physical therapy at university, so there's all kind of rules. But as a physical therapist and as a professor, I meet people's needs. So that to me is service. I also am a mentor and a role model for students, and one of the things I've found that's been so cool for me is because I wear my cross. I don't know where it is right now, but I usually do. And students come up and they'll meet me in the hallway or something, and we used to be on campus, and say, well, we don't know this, but Amy, I bet you know this from the Bible. And I'm like, yep, I do. Let's talk.
Excellent.
And so they open the opportunity for me, and nobody can say anything.
So they recognize you as a Christian just based on something that you're wearing.
Yep.
And then they bring up the topic.
And also because I say from my self, Lord have mercy a lot.
Tremendous. Love that. Thank you. Anybody else like to share? Something that you wrote down?
I think for me, a lot of it is that teenagers, a lot of the teenagers I know have a very skewed view of what church and God are. And that they are, and so the kids I know always ask me, I mean, they know I go to church, and they're like, and the first question they ask is why? and that just opens a door for being able to share with them of what it means to me.
And that might be the only place they're getting that.
For sure.
Correct?
For sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for that. So again, making yourself available for those conversations, right? Anybody else before we move forward? You'll have another chance, I promise. Terrific. So in Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose. So I want you to think about how your work, how your career, how your schooling, how your place of impact works into God's purpose. And how are you a part of that? How are you connected to that? So, second opportunity for you to write and share. How can we bloom where we're planted? Write some thoughts down for me if you would, please. How can you bloom where you're planted? What specific things can you do and or say and or exhibit that will allow you to bloom where you're planted? We need some background music as you're writing.
Little Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Should we do that one? Dun-dun-dun,
There you go. There you go.
dun-dun-dun.
Would anyone like to share what they had thought about as far as blooming where you're planted?
I kind of was thinking about what Amy said and how in her work, you know, the kids come to her, and I think what we are all doing in our work is building those relationships that we have with each other. And when I think about that, I think about Kairos and what I learned, you know, from that experience, and it was just listen, listen, love, love. You know, we have to take the time and be quiet. And some of us just want to move our mouths and just spew it out, because that's what I like to do. But to just really stop and listen to what people have to say.
That's tremendous, and that is so important. You cannot build a relationship only through talking, right? There has to be a give and take there. Building a relationship requires that listening skill, and I think that's difficult for all of us. And it's not just listening, it's listening not to react,
Right.
not to respond.
Right.
It's listening to actually hear and understand,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Anybody else like to share?
I am new to my role and taking on this role from someone who did it for 21 years.
Oh
So
my.
imagine stepping into those shoes and being like, I don't know how to do any of this, but that's okay. And I think just over the last 6 months, recognizing that I can do it my way and not doing it the way that was done before, and seeing that my way is very different than the way that the gal did. I really esteem service. I really feel like it's important to extend that grace and on all of that. And so being able to do it my way, I know when she left, she said, well, you're going to have to be hard on them. And I was like, I don't want to be hard on them like that. I see where you're coming from, but it's not the way that I operate. And to be able to see that my response or my efforts of grace and help and understanding and firmness, there are rules in the financial office. You have to follow my
Sure.
rules, but I can do it in a way that they come back and they continue conversations with me instead of and then leaving.
Mhm.
So being able to be grace and light and gentleness while still running an office that works the way it needs to, and communicating that clearly.
And I think also, Morgan, you mentioned making it your own,
Yeah.
right? Not going into something, doing it the way somebody else did it, or thinking that you have to be perfect this way,
Yes.
right? It's just all about progress and doing it in your way with grace.
Mm-hmm.
What's the saying about you catch more flies with honey than
Right.
with vinegar?
Right.
Right?
Mhm.
I think, again, listening skills and being gracious when you're
Mhm.
building those relationships, it's huge.
Right.
Huge. Thank you. Anyone else want to share? This is good stuff, guys. You guys could stand up here and do this.
But you're the facilitator.
You know, I think when people get a call from me, they're not typically happy to hear from me. But I feel like if I can demonstrate that they are of more value than the process or the procedure or the work that is being performed, if they understand that they are more important and that they are valuable, in a sense, then they tend to open up, and in a sense we can see progress, if you want to call it that. So the way I phrased that was, for me, it was in terms of how can I bloom where I'm planted. I can practice humility and, you know, not go in there expressing that, in a sense, I'm the expert or anything like that, but in a sense, I'm here to learn. I'm here to understand who you are and the difficulties that you are facing and what.
And Regan built this up, and I know the other speakers today are experts in their field. I'm certainly not an expert in this field. I'm just going to tell you what I've learned and what I've found and share that with you, and hopefully you'll find some things to take away and work in your own work life. So I'm going to give you 10 tips as to some things that you can do to practice your faith at work. Number one, and we've talked about this already a little bit, and that is to build relationships, right? What do we mean when we say be interested instead of interesting? What does that mean?
Like what Annie is talking about.
You may also think of, for some of us who have a stage, whatever that stage may be, we can come into it to show everybody how much we know versus help me understand what you need, and let's work at this together. So I think there's different ways to think about interested versus interested.
Agreed. Have you ever known the sage on the stage? The
I've
person
been that
who,
person.
the person who gets up and is just so impressed with themselves, they
Oh,
want to
yeah.
tell you everything they know about a topic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they're talking 10 miles over your head and you get nothing from that. Yes? Not just me? So to be interesting, instead of being interested, which means you're curious about them, coming at it from curiosity, right? When you're building those relationships, being curious. Does your video match your audio? What does that mean? Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna use Enron as an example here, because they're kind of an extreme example. If you were to look up their mission statement and their vision for their business, do you guys all know who Enron was?
Mhm.
I know some of you are younger than me, so I wanna make sure that you all know who they were. In their mission statement and their vision statement, they used words like excellence and integrity and honesty. So when you walked into their corporate building, the front wall had this mission statement on it with those words. So how did their video match their audio? It didn't.
It did not.
Right?
Mhm.
They ended up defrauding their investors, some of whom, they were not corporate investors. These were people who had invested their life savings in this business. And they defrauded these people out of billions of dollars. And by cooking the books, they took Arthur Andersen down with them. So the video and the audio were really on opposite ends of the spectrum. And that's an extreme example. And I think when we're looking to build a relationship, do people see in me what I say? Am I walking the talk, or am I just talking the talk? Right? Anybody have an example of that? I know we've all been there. We've all known people who, gosh, just not quite on the same wavelength with their audio and their video. Or maybe it's been us, right? Maybe based on fear of rejection, or fear of not fitting in. We've done or said something that didn't quite match up with our value system, with what we truly believe. So again, as you're building a relationship, it's really important that people see who you are, as well as hear who you are.
One of the things with working with teenagers is they love to call you out on ways that you mess up, because that's all you're doing is calling them out. And man, they're I mean, and it honestly, they're like, yeah, you weren't, and I'm like, I know, and you just have to have the humility and and just be like, you're right, I didn't do it the way it was supposed to be done.
Exactly, and fess up to it, right? What is the number one complaint that most people have of Christians? That we're what? Hypocrites. You hear that all the time, you read it all the time. And that's why, is because we're not concerned enough about our audio and our video matching up. Doesn't mean we have to be perfect, right? It's like Ryan said, when you mess up, you fess up, right? You acknowledge that you did, and then you fix it. It's not about being perfect. So again, another Bible verse from Thessalonians 5:11. Therefore encourage one another and build one another up, just as you're already doing. So how does that work in your workplace? How are you building other people up? How are you building those relationships? Encouraging other folks. Okay? So number 2, pray. And you're gonna see pray for the next 4. Because prayer is a huge piece of the puzzle here. So number 1, you're gonna pray for yourself, for increased faith in Christ, to trust God for what He has done for you each day. So how are you starting out your day? Are you, as you said earlier, building yourself up, setting your own mindset, right? Getting your own attitude right. Praying for yourself first, for God to fill you so that you can go and impact others on His behalf. I have this on my refrigerator. And I've had it there for a long time. And we did this here. We got them here when we read I think it was Purpose Driven Life.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Because I've had it on my refrigerator for a long time. And this is how I start my morning. When I grab my water from the fridge, I notice this, and I just basically say that silent prayer. Lord, this is your day. Who do you want me to reach out to today with your love? Generally speaking, that person shows up. It's weird. It's almost like having that reticular activator system at the base of your brain, that when you want to go buy a new car, all of a sudden that's all you see on the road is that same car, because you're focused on that, right? So when I'm focused on finding somebody that God wants me to love on, they generally show up.
I think that's a God thing,
I agree.
totally.
I agree. My dad used to call those God winks.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah, he didn't believe in circumstance, so he called them God winks. Yeah, I love that. So again, how are you filling yourself back up at the beginning of the day? Praying for yourself. Number 2, actually number 3 on your page. But again, we're praying that God will bless my efforts, that my work is fruitful, and that my work would glorify God. When I'm concentrating on asking God to bless my efforts, again, I'm concentrating and focusing in on what are my efforts, right? What am I doing through the day where I have an opportunity to impact in that way?
Mhm.
Next one, prayer. Again, that your work becomes your mission field, that the fruit of the Spirit is evident in you, that you fulfill your identity and mission as a Christian. So I want to stop right here just for a bit and talk a little bit about what is your identity or mission as a Christian.
Share the gospel.
Share the gospel. Whether it's in word or deed, right? Share the gospel.
I'd have to actually say love has to come first,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can share through love.
There you go. So again, it's part of that building of the relationship, right? Loving on people. Yes.
I think more than it goes along with sharing the gospel and sharing your faith is sharing hope. I mean, it's just, that is something that is just missing in this world.
Especially right now, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think people just, without hope, there's no reason to live. I mean, there's no, tomorrow will just be worse than today.
It was like Ryan was talking before we got started with sessions, and he was talking about all the things in 2021 that have happened and impacted all of us in a pretty much negative way, right? So people do lose hope. Those of us who have faith in God and a relationship with Jesus Christ have hope built in, right? And just to be able to share that, again, maybe by word, maybe by deed, right? Thank you.
You know, the tech industry is exceedingly cynical, and it's especially where I'm at. There's not a lot of people in faith, but those that are stand out, like they shine because there is hope. You know, to be optimistic is like you're kind of teased and made fun of because well that thing won't work. I'll make it work, and then you do.
Yeah.
And it's fun to see who stands up alongside you when you're in those kind of meetings.
Do you have relationships with those people who stand up alongside of you? Awesome.
Yeah, we figured out who's who real quick.
Awesome. That's terrific, and that's necessary. It's necessary to find those relationships in the workplace where you do have those commonalities and can share your faith with each other and support each other.
I've also learned to reference my Presbyterian upbringing, and that kind of helps people know. Like it's a safe way to say who I am without making a big deal about it, and then people are able to recognize it. Oh, we're on the same team.
Great, great. And I'm with you, Pat, from the standpoint that there is a lot of cynicism in certain industries, especially in a scientific field. Oftentimes, there's not a connection between science and faith, which I find odd, and yet that's the way it is, right?
Yeah, they can coexist. And people
they
don't.
can. Yeah.
Some people just don't want that to be the case.
Yeah. And yet, those of you who do stand up together are beacons of light and hope for those other folks, whether you know it or not. You may not know the impact that you're having.
It took me about 20 years of my 22-year career to figure that out.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. 2 Corinthians 5:20 through 21. Therefore, we are ambassadors for Christ. I love this. I love the mental picture that gives me of being an ambassador for Christ. God making his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. For our sake he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. So when you think of yourselves going out into the workplace, maybe you're putting something on your forehead that says ambassador. Or you could put righteousness of God on your forehead, right? I mean, not literally, but figuratively speaking, right? I love the mental picture that gives, to be an ambassador. Number 5, again, we're still on pray. For employees, supervisors, co-workers, customers, clients, those who are easy to get along with and those who are not. Does anybody work with someone who's not easy to get along with?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Yeah.
But can we talk about family?
I'm
Oh, no,
sorry?
never mind.
Well, it's not just the others, it's also our people.
Yes, yes, absolutely,
Thank you.
absolutely. So, praying for those people that are hard to love sometimes pushes us beyond our own boundaries. I have a saying when I'm frustrated with somebody, I'll say, oh, I'll pray for her. Bless her heart, I'll pray for her. It's that Southern thing, bless her heart, I'll pray for her. And that's not necessarily a very nice thing to say. So praying for those people that are hard to love. What does that do for you?
Sometimes it helps me remember that I can't make judgments because I'm not able to walk in their shoes.
Yeah, we don't know what they're dealing with, right?
You really do not know.
Yeah.
Opens our eyes to empathy.
Yeah, and compassion, right? Yeah, I think it makes us better people when we can actually pray sincerely for people who are hard to love. Now, what is that? Go ahead.
It takes it away from me, because now I'm on God.
Yeah.
Lord, and I'm also, I do not know what to do with this.
There you go. There you go.
And then that's an important thing.
There you go.
And
Yep.
I think one of the differences is, like, if you phrase it the way you did, bless your heart, I'll pray for you, and you say that out loud to the person, it basically puts them in an awkward place of like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Type thing.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do it internally and you just pray, Lord, let me have mercy with this person.
Yeah.
Then it doesn't put up this wall from the other person of like, who are you? Why are you talking to me like there's something wrong with me?
And that brings up another point, Ryan, thank you. In that it's easy to say to somebody, may I pray for you? Have you ever done that and had somebody say no? I never have. Nobody's ever said no to me when I've asked if I could pray for them. And that, I think, is your point. I'm asking permission, right, to pray for them. Now, you can also say, what can I pray for? However, I think that takes a different level in a relationship to say, what can I pray for? Versus, may I pray for you, right? Great, but I think, again, what that does for us, what does it do for the other person?
Well, if they respond, which most do, like you said, they don't say no, it actually allows us to listen and begin to develop a relationship.
There you go.
And even some of our hardcore faculty who are very scientific, they haven't turned me down yet.
Good. That's lovely to hear. Yeah. That gives me hope.
Oh yeah, I got hope, yeah. And it's
Yeah.
because of the people who I know to go to, because I'll go, you need to help me right now, because I'm not a very good Christian, and they'll pull me back in my lane.
Very good, very good. Number 6, be aware. So again, this has to do more with you. Be aware of not just the words that you're saying, what is your tonality? Again, if I say, well, bless your heart, I'll pray for you. That's different than may I pray for you, right? Whole different tonality to that. So be aware of not just what you're saying, but how you're saying it. How are you communicating? Do you communicate with people the way they'd like to be communicated with? When I say, may I pray for you, and I'll say, may I communicate with you as well, and how would you like that to happen? Would you like an email? Would you like text? Would you like a phone call? Would you like to go to coffee and have a one-on-one conversation? right? So find that out from them, how they would like to be communicated with. If they're open to having you pray for them. I love this verse, Ephesians 4:29. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. And I love their needs, that piece. How often again do we, again like we talked, we listen to respond instead of listening to understand. So what are their needs and how are we addressing that? Number 7, aim to be faithful and present. So how can you help someone else in the workplace to reach their goals, their aspirations? How many of you are in a leadership role in your company? So you have perfect opportunities, right, as leaders to be able to impact others in their roles and help them be better in their roles. How many of you work in a team situation? Same thing there, right? Where you have other team members that you can help. How many of you work in a situation where there are other departments that are impacted by yours? Same thing again, right? How can you help that other department? How can you have a communication with that other department person by saying, this is what we're doing, is that helpful for you? Is that helpful for your department, right? Again, building those relationships across departments. You have a situation with kiddos where you have an opportunity to impact their parents, right? So keep in mind all of the, and I don't mean this to sound directional, but the up people, the people who you're serving, and then the side to side. All of those folks can be impacted by you in your faith. Next, show gratitude, especially for the church, for other believers, like Pat said, where you have those relationships within your company and you're supporting each other. That is so important. Be refreshed by the relationships that you have with other Christians, whether that's at work, at school, at church, and allow them to encourage you and to pray for you. So how often, as human beings, do we ask for help? Not just me, huh? So what does that mean to ask for help? What does it mean to say to somebody, I'm feeling discouraged right now. Would you pray for this? Right? Could we do that more often for ourselves? Yeah. So belonging to an organization, whether that's a men's ministry, a women's ministry, a church group, a life group, doesn't matter. But belonging to those, I don't want to say an organization, but those groups where you can actually be part of other Christians and ask for their encouragement, ask for their prayer, and then show gratitude for that. Thessalonians 5:16-18, rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in what circumstances? All circumstances. For this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. So giving thanks in all circumstances. Again, going back to that person who's hard to love. What if you started your day by giving thanks for that person? Would that change your mindset when dealing with them? Yes? I think so. 9, trust. Oh my gosh, this is so hard. Trust that God has a purpose for your work. What does that mean to you, to trust that God has a purpose for your work?
It's hard for me because I'm like somebody who just sits there and approves payment processes for like one of the state departments that I think is what makes Colorado, Colorado. I mean, I'm with oil and gas, I'm with mine and reclamation, I'm with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, I'm with Colorado Water Resources, and I mean, like, to me, my department is Colorado. So, but I'm not the one out there doing the work. So, but.
How much interaction do you have with those
I have the
folks?
interaction with those people, and I have made really good connections, and I have done the, yes, I'm a Christian, how can I pray for you? And I have done it with a lot of backgrounds in life, and those who are not Christians. But it's still hard when you're sitting there doing this to feel like you can impact that. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
But that's
it
not
is-
your only impact, Kimmy.
Right, but it's still like when you're in the mundane of the day, right? That's not where your brain is.
Yeah, I get it.
So it is hard, and then when you do have those moments, to recognize them and be able to step out of those.
I have a question for you. Has anybody that you've ever impacted that way ever said something to you about the impact that you've had for them?
Not with the state,
Okay.
in my previous, yes.
Okay.
But, well, and I shouldn't say that, I mean, because like you said, you know, we stand out. We recognize each other. It doesn't take very long to be like, you're a Christian, I can talk to you. So, I mean, yeah, you build those relationships, and then you have that, oh, thank you, you know, I'm really glad you're there to pray for me, type of situations. But as far as, impacting it with non-believers, not in the state, but in my past.
Okay. I would encourage you to think about that when you get frustrated or maybe discouraged that you're not having the impact, or that you're not connecting with the impact that you're having. You are having an impact. You are, whether you know it or not. And I would tell you in some cases it's an eternal impact.
Yeah,
You may not know it.
that's amazing.
I always struggle with this, always. In fact, there have been times where I've wanted to leave my career specifically because of this. And I have to go through a number of mental exercises to get there, to get to that purpose.
Would you share those?
Well, I work in cybersecurity, and so, you know, like we're big on protecting personal data, and
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you right now.
There was a big thing right before Christmas that affected the entire industry, and
Would that be Cronus?
no, it was the
No, yeah.
Log4j.
Yep.
But like, we also provide tools that other companies and other organizations use that can promote God's word, like the different apps that are out there with Bibles and that kind of stuff. So like, I have to constantly go back to that, and sometimes I'd rather have it be far more immediate. But then I get kind of concerned because those are the hard jobs. Like those, because when you see that impact, when you're actually doing things that have an impact on somebody right there in the moment, that's where tears happen, and there's hugs and all that stuff too. But so to do it from the tech side is kind of a safe thing because then I don't have to get emotionally involved with what that means. But I've really had a hard time with that over the years.
So you're not having a hard time with the impact you're having a hard time with trusting
Yeah,
the impact.
the recognition, because we don't have, I don't ever see the end result. That I don't ever see I mean, if something doesn't go wrong, then that's good. But hey, we didn't have a meltdown today. Great. Like
Can I give you
that's
all
hard.
the mental picture that I come up with when I kind of get into that spot where I'm going, oh, because we're all immediate gratification people, right? We all do that. At least I do. And sometimes you don't know at all. You don't ever know, right? So it's looking at, you're the pebble and you're being thrown into the pond, and the ripple effect from that pebble in the pond, and you just don't know where that's going to go. And trusting God to know where that goes, and the fact that you've been part of that, you will one day know on the other side of heaven, yes. And then maybe get some encouragement from some other folks, from some other Christians, yes? Maybe each other, right? Maybe we all need to kind of have a little Facebook group or something and just encourage each other every once in a while. Go ahead.
So one of the things I think I'm hearing, because grading papers Like, that's really not a joy thing. I'm just saying. And what I've taken to doing is kind of what you were saying earlier, Sue, is before I walk in to get, when we used to be in person, go in to do a lecture, I pray. Lord, this is not about me. This is about you. Show me who in this room has challenges with material. So I just started doing little prayers, and even now, when I'm looking at a student's paper, I pray, give me the guidance to grade this unbiased for their benefit, not because of something they've said to me inappropriately, whatever, because that happens in email, we all know.
Sure.
So that's what I've been doing, because otherwise I'm just like, here's another task. So I'm trying really hard every time I do anything. Lord, this is about you, not about me.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not always easy. I get where you're
Yeah.
going, Kim, because I'm like, after about 60 of my 70 papers, I'm like, I don't really care. All of y'all can have the same grade. Let's
Checked
go.
out.
Let's go. Yeah.
This is done yet?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Looks good to me is what I can say.
Exactly.
Looks good to
Check.
me.
Great. The Bible verse that I chose for this portion
I
is,
love
for I
that
know,
one.
this is one of my favorites, Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, Kim. Plans to prosper you, and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope. There's Ryan's word, and a future. Isn't this just the best verse ever? I just love this. God has plans to prosper us, right? So we just have to lean into that, even when it's hard. Number 10, because I've built the relationship and I've prayed and I've worked hard to listen and understand, now I've earned the right to invite. Does that make sense to everybody when I say I've earned the right to invite? Have you ever been in a situation where somebody just kind of spewed all sorts of stuff all over you religiously and then wanted you to come to a revival, right? And you don't have any relationship with that person. You don't know him from Adam. They've not taken the time to get to know you. Doesn't that put you off? Imagine what it does for other folks. So invite them to church, invite them to a life group, to MOPS, to a women's ministry event, a men's ministry event, a Bible study, or invite them to coffee and have a one-on-one conversation about who they are and what they're struggling with. We all struggle. Do you guys know who Zig Ziglar is? He made the comment that we all walk around with a sign, an invisible sign around our neck that says, "Make me feel special." So when you look at another human being that way, they just want to be heard. They just want to feel special. And if you can help them do that, that's where that relationship comes in. Now you have credibility, so that when you want to share your faith, they're going to listen. So how are you using your talents for the glory of God? Are you faithful in the little things? Do you understand that every single one of us has a special path that's laid out for us? And part of the joy of living is figuring out what that path is, right? Figuring out what our purpose is and how that fits into God's purpose. Understanding that work can be an act of worship. My dad used to say to us growing up that when we did anything, didn't matter what the work was, what the job was, could be a menial task, we had to do it so well that we were willing to sign our name to it. For everybody to know that we did that. And if we did it that well, then that was an act of worship. What resources do you have? Are you plugged into those? Are you filling yourself up? Keep in mind that you have to fill your own cup before you can pour out on someone else. So how are you taking advantage of the resources that you have? And the verse I want to leave you with today, and thank you so much to everybody for being here and for your participation. I told you it was going to be interactive, and you guys just participated. I so appreciate that. Whatever you do, whatever, doesn't say if you're the President of the United States. It says whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord. Colossians 3:23. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.